let's get into Prager UwU and their nonsense.
Take a close look at this. Jonathan Haidt, the noted New York University psychologist, calls it the most important graph in the world. Why does he say that? Because he knows this graph reveals a simple, inescapable fact. There is no substitute for free market capitalism as a promoter of human prosperity.
Okay, so can anybody tell me the problem with this graph right now? Can anybody tell me the problem with what this graph shows and what they are trying to convince us of? Anyone in the chat? Exponential, it's too smooth. You should do a video on Caitlin Bennett. Unreliable data, too linear. Blocklash is now following. Thank you very much for the follow, Blockash. Also, Rickety Rocket and Technetium NB as well from earlier. It's just made up and it shows. Well, let's pretend for a second. Let's just pretend, right, that this graph is not lying. Let's pretend everything it says is true. What problem do we have? I am error. I am error. Got it. Fox Faunist has it as well. Fox Faunist and I am error. You both get a very H. I would give you something besides it, but I'm just going to have a dancing very H Suris up there. He's up there saying hello to everybody. How are you doing today? I'm looking up his robes. It's not very flattening. There's not much up there, actually. So the first problem we have here is that GDP is not the money of the people. GDP is the gross domestic product of a nation. But your GDP says nothing about where the money is actually controlled. It says nothing about who actually controls that money at all. Yep, Dory 117 has it as well. GDP per capita does not mean good for the citizenry. The other problem is that by simply showing the graph as it is, it's assuming that capitalism is responsible for everything, but let's just pretend that that's not an issue. By itself, this is assuming, to everybody who's watching, that GDP is a marker for human prosperity. And human prosperity as a race, like as far as how technologically advanced we are, how much we can do with the technology that we have, how well learned we are in general, those are all things that something like this could represent somewhat. But the actual money in the hands of the people, not something this graph can show us.
Let it be noted that Haidt is no one's idea of a conservative.
Hostile witness principle is what he's trying to appeal to right now, which is actually a good thing to appeal to. It makes an argument much more convincing. When you try to say that, hey, the person I'm talking about is actually a socialist, they don't have an onus in telling you a lie, or they don't have an onus in telling you a lie that favors them. They're going to tell you the truth even though it doesn't favor them. It's the hostile witness principle, and it's not a bad strategy.
But when hard evidence stares him in the face, he's not going to look away.
Speaking of hard evidence, the speaker they have right now is Andy Puzder, Senior Fellow, Pepperdine School of Public Policy, author, The Capitalist Comeback. Andy Puzder. So, Andy, who are you? Let's take a look at what you actually are. You are an American attorney, author, and businessman. You're the former chief executive officer of CKE Restaurants, the parent company of Hardee's and Carl's Jr., a position he held from September 2000 to March of 2017. Oh, so 3 years ago when Hardee's actually started understanding that it needed to make stuff that people could afford, that was when he left. Neat. Co-authored a book entitled Job Creation, How It Really Works and Why Government Doesn't Understand It. Trump nominated him as Secretary of Labor. but he withdrew because there was a lack of votes needed for his confirmation. Okay. After withdrawing, he published the second book entitled The Capitalist Comeback, The Trump Boom, and the Left's Plot to Stop It. Whoo! So I love how over here, he's a senior fellow of public policy, and he's an author of The Capitalist Comeback. But the full title of Capitalist Comeback is The Trump Boom and the Left's Plot to Stop It. Oh. Let's see here. So, let's see what he says about his politics. Let's take a look at these things real quick. He's critical of raising the federal minimum wage, claiming the 15-hour minimum wage increased the cost for non-consumers and increases automation, leading to fewer jobs. Well, so this person would have been against the Industrial Revolution. He would have had to be. Being against automation is being against progress, like technological progress. And unfortunately, being against technological progress doesn't help you very much because it's going to keep on pushing on with or without you. So simply being against it, and then specifically being against paying your workers more so that you can be against technological progress, is stupid. Also, minimum wage hasn't been raised in several years, and yet the cost of consumer goods has almost doubled in that time. And this includes things like rent. It's not a consumer good, but just in general. So, to be like, I'm not going to raise minimum wage because raising minimum wage would increase the cost of consumer goods. Consumer goods costs are already being raised anyway. Inflation does that on its own. Raising your minimum wage to keep up with inflation should be what you're trying to do. But to simply argue that your reasoning for not doing... It's like saying, I'm not going to cut off his toe. He'll bleed to death. Okay, that's fair. But, the toe has gangrene, and he's already dying. Functionally, nothing changes if you cut off his toe. Yes, the chance of him bleeding to death increases, but the toe's gangrenous. You need to get rid of it. Yeah, he might die. But he's already going to die anyway. So why not try to fix the problem? You're not aiding in the problem by trying to fix it. At least not in this case. Oopsie Poopy says, are there any real, truly socialist countries? So there are no countries right now that on their own have pure socialism, but there's also no country that has pure capitalism either. So it's a bit of a false dichotomy when somebody tries to say or sell you that, oh, have we tried socialism before? Has it worked here? Well, much like how we haven't tried full capitalism with no restraints whatsoever, we have economies that are marginally more or less free. The same can be said about socialism. There are aspects of socialism that you can use in a country without going full socialist. Extremism doesn't help anybody. All right. Let's continue on with this. He opposes raising the $2.13 per hour minimum wage for tipped workers. I wonder why. It says there are solutions to this problem, but increasing the minimum wage is not the best solution. If we're going to increase the minimum wage at all, we've got to keep a lower minimum wage for entry-level workers or those people who are just going to, or those people are just going to be shut out of the workforce. Wait. So if we raise the minimum wage, hold on. If we're going to raise the minimum wage, we must keep a lower minimum wage. So that if you're an entry-level worker, fuck you. If we are to raise the minimum wage, we must create a special protected category of lower minimum wage. And it must be called for entry-level workers. But there are people who are 45 fucking years old who are considered entry-level workers at their job. So technically, by this definition, we could keep the lower echelon minimum wage for anyone forever. All you're doing by creating this dichotomy, it's the same fucking thing that happens when you create the laws that say that you must have your employees be full-time after they've been working for more than 32 hours. It's the same fucking thing. When you do something like that, the company, what they do, because I've lived this, both as a manager being told how to operate this and as an employee suffering under this, what they will do is, instead of saying, oh, yeah, no, you worked 40 hours a week for 12 weeks, you're full-time now. No, what they'll do is on that last week, they'll cut you down and go, nope, you're going to stay part-time as long as we can. If there is an ability for a corporation to exploit you by keeping you in a lower bracket of pay, they're going to do it. Like, I'm sorry. Your job isn't your fucking friend. Like, to argue that to increase minimum wage, we have to create a new minimum wage that is lower than minimum wage is absolute butt-fuckery. All right. What else does he have here? The Congressional Budget Office came out with a report last year that said you could raise the minimum wage to $9 without much impact on jobs, and you could probably do that. He said that protesters who are demanding a 15-hour minimum wage should really think about what they're doing. They have thought about what they're doing. That's why they're protesting, you dipshit. Like, I'm sorry. They want the $15 minimum wage. Now, I'm not saying that $15 is the solution. Before somebody tries to catch me in that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is they have thought about the problem, and the problem is that they're not able to afford their living expenses. They're not able to afford anything besides simply existing. So they want more. They want to be able to do more than just fucking exist. And you, as a person who's been a CEO of a company for 17 years, doesn't get to tell them they aren't allowed that. I'm sorry, you don't. You don't get that. Like, now on the $9 without much impact on jobs, that I'm kind of okay with, and here's the reason why. The $15 federal minimum wage is not what we need to go for, not because people don't deserve it. They do deserve it. But the problem is that minimum wage, what is sustainable for you, varies state to state, city to city, county to county. So having minimum wage handled at the different levels, like obviously raise your federal minimum wage to $9 if that's not going to have much impact on jobs, because that's just a benefit to everybody who's working in the workforce anyway. But on top of that, you also have to raise your minimum wage for your individual states to meet their cost of living. As an example, let's take the average cost of living in Georgia, where I live, right? Let's take the average cost of living. So the average cost of living here in Georgia, based on here, I'm pulling this up on the fly. Average cost. So let's take a studio apartment in Georgia, $790, right? So we're going to open up a calculator, and we're going to start having these prices available. So we have $790 for a studio apartment. Now, if you have not gone apartment searching before, a studio apartment is not an apartment that has one bedroom, a bathroom, and then like a communal area. No, a studio apartment's one room. That's it. It's literally just a single room with a kitchen as part of that room. Also, .nerd with the $10 donation. Thank you very much. For $10, paid labor is just slavery with money. Yes, it is. Wage slavery is a thing. Okay, so we have $790 here for a studio apartment, which is just a space you can sleep and eat in. That's it. This is bare minimum. Barest of minimums. All right. So, let's see here. We have grocery, about $95. Okay. So we add 95. We have health. This looks like health insurance, which you kind of need. I don't have it because I can't fucking afford it, but let's go ahead and do that. All right. Utilities, 103. I don't know what it means by utilities there. Oh, I see. Cost of living 93.4. I see what it means. This isn't dollars. This isn't dollars. Okay. You know what? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take the studio apartment. We're going to go off the numbers that I had. So when I was living in a studio apartment, my water bill was about $30. My power bill, usually 100 to 150. Internet bill, about 70. Phone bill was about 50 at the time. Let's zoom this in a little more so we can see. All right. Now, what other costs do we have here? Let's take a gas bill. Getting to and from work. I didn't have one because I used a bicycle, but generally we're looking at about $200 a month if we're just talking about to and from work. Only to and from work. All right, now food. How much does it cost to feed, or average cost to feed one person per month? Let's go off these numbers. For one person to eat on a moderate budget, it costs about $3,000 per year, $250 per month. Okay, so we're going to add $250 for food. Now, this person hasn't bought any entertainment, and this person hasn't paid for anything that has been fixed or needed to be fixed, needed to be replaced, etc. But just in case they do, we're going to add just another $100 in here as what the person can have to replace things that break. So, pillow gets shredded or spills milk on it and the thing has to be completely destroyed. You can buy a new pillow. You can buy a new set of blankets, etc. This piece of furniture breaks, chair breaks, you can get that replaced. So this is low ending. This is low balling a lot. $1,640 per month is your cost of living here. All right. Now remember that. Remember those numbers. Remember 1640. And there could be costs that I've not considered. I haven't put in things like Netflix if you wanted to have that. I haven't put in a lot of standard things. I've just had internet and just this is basic. What about insurance to drive around? You're right. Car insurance. And if you're young, car insurance is expensive. So we're going to call it $150. It's less than mine. Mine's $180. So you're right. $1,790 is our number we're working with now. Now, let's say you are working a minimum wage job. This minimum wage job is going to schedule you 32 hours a week, usually. Right? So 32 times 7.25. Minimum wage. Boop. Multiplied by 4. Before taxes, minimum wage, 32 hours a week, $928. Let's pretend it's a good job, though. Let's pretend it's a job that will actually give you full 40 hours. 1,160. 1,160. Okay, so this is the money that you have before taxes. In this point, you are in what is called a 12% tax bracket. A 12% tax bracket means that 12% of this is taken out in taxes, not counting any other things that are taken out in your taxes on top of that. Sorry. So, we're going to go ahead and round that to 10% just to be super smooth and easy. So 10% of this would be 116. So we're going to go ahead and go, well now, times 0.12, 139.2. So 1160 minus 139.2. That's our taxes. So we have $1,020 to play with for the month. Now let's subtract our expenses for the month. These are lowballed. That's awkward. That's really fucking weird. Why are those numbers so low? Why are those numbers in the negative? How are those numbers in the negative? This is a minimum wage job, working full-time, 40 hours a week, with bare minimum basic expenses. Bare minimum basics. Why? How can your minimum wage, your base wage that people should be able to live off of, just survive? Just survive. Not even live well. Just survival. All I've done is put in numbers for survival. The only luxury thing this person has is internet. They have to have a phone line because jobs have to call them. Internet is basically a necessity now. We live in a connected age. And even if we took those two off magically, we still are hell in the negative. So, how do you manage this? Well, we did say there was a studio apartment. So, what is our cost of living for a 2-bedroom apartment? $958, which is about what it costed me. That looks about right. So let's say you get a roommate, right? That's how you plan on surviving this. So remember 1020.8. Let's multiply that by 2, you get a roommate. And then we know that $958 is what it's going to cost for a 2-bedroom. Let's go ahead and minus our cost for the studio, so we have to add 168 to our previous 1790. So that is going to be plus. What did we have it before? What was it? Please, Twitch, have it. Was it 190, I believe, right? 1980. So, and let's add another 50 for your internet, or not for your power, because 2 people are consuming power in this house. So you have to add another 50 for your power. So now with a roommate, which can lead to problems, like having a toxic roommate who consumes all your food. Oh, right, speaking of food, it was $250 for one person, so we need to add another $250 for food. Now 2 people can afford food. We've increased the amount of power that's coming in. $22.80. This is our monthly expenses with the 2-bedroom apartment, with the food taken care of. Everything's golden, right? $22.80. So these 2 people are working 2 full-time minimum wage jobs. That was 1020.8 times 2 minus 2280. Oh, wow. Wait. So even with your roommate, you're still in the fucking negatives. How? How is that a thing? How are you still, with 2 people working full-time, in the negative? How have you managed that? How can you manage a system where 2 people working full-time with the barest of minimums, everything in your house, this is what you get. Gas Lord Tommy says, having the minimum wage means the lowest possible wages. Does it not? Yes, it is the lowest possible wages, but it is also the wages that the majority of people in the United States are having to live off of. Or a good portion of them. Enough of them. I did this for years. Did you split utilities? Well, there's no splitting utilities here. This is the total cost of the house's income. This is everything that you get in the house, total. So to run the house, you've got $2,280. Obviously, you and the person would be splitting things down the middle, but still. Imagine having a kid in that equation. Yeah, imagine that. Imagine the white supremacists that desperately want you to be able to repopulate the white race to fight the brown people. Imagine those people trying to figure out some way for this to make fucking sense. Let's see here. There also is from Atheist Swede, add SNAP. So not everybody gets SNAP benefits. And not everybody can even, apply for them. I had to do all of this without SNAP benefits for 10 years. So I'm not adding SNAP benefits into this equation because the idea is not to figure out how can somebody survive in this environment functionally, because there are ways to do it. Obviously, if I did it for 10 years, there was a way. It's not whether or not somebody can find a way to work in this environment. It's whether or not this environment is the one we should be cultivating. Whether or not this environment doesn't need either revolution or reform. That is what this conversation is about. Justin H says, what are SNAP benefits? SNAP benefits. SNAP. It's an acronym. It's a type of government assistance program here. All right. So, Chaos Lord says, I mean, as in it's the minimum wage you can get paid. So it is the minimum wage you can get paid. A company cannot pay you less than that unless you are working a tipped wage job. And if you're working a tipped wage job, a company can pay you $2.13 instead of $7.15 or $7.25. My point isn't that you can't make this function. My point isn't that you can't find a way to survive in this environment. My point is that this environment is fucking rigged against you. That's my point. So, back to Andrew and his political beliefs. He opposed a never-enacted rule that would have required time and a half overtime pay for certain workers when they worked more than 40 hours a week. Wait a minute. Oh, thank you very much for the follow, Disco Scone. So he's against overtime. He's against overtime pay. The new rule would simply add to the extensive regulatory maze the Obama administration has imposed on employers, forcing many to offset increased labor expense by cutting costs elsewhere. In practice, this means that reduced opportunities, bonuses and benefits, perks, and promotions. Ah, wait a minute. This rhetoric right here. So first of all, this is about overtime pay when you work more than 40 hours a week. Overtime pay is a godsend. So if you look at this, when he says in practice, this means reduced opportunities, bonuses, benefits, perks, and promotions. Well, benefits, perks, promotions, etc., all those are things that you figure out with your peers around you, whether they be your immediate bosses or anything like that. So, if you were to have overtime pay, you wouldn't have as many opportunities, bonuses, benefits, or perks. This is changing the villain from the CEO, who will not allow you to get overtime pay, to your peers around you who are competing with you for those opportunities, benefits, perks, and promotions. by changing the villain and allowing you to infight instead of actually understanding who the problem child is, the CEO. This is a type of rhetoric that constantly forces people against each other as opposed to against the people who are part of the corrupt system that they are in. Which is awkward. David Thompson says, I was once told if you're making minimum wage, it just means the company wants to pay you less, but can't. Yeah. I could understand that. Between the Wings says, tipped wage is a thing I don't understand. It doesn't exist here. Yeah, it's really weird that restaurants aren't like redonk expensive elsewhere, but we're told that if we had something other than tipped wage here, restaurants would become redonk expensive. So, he supports repealing the Affordable Care Act. In an opinion editorial published by Wall Street Journal, he referred to the law as the Non-Affordable Care Act, and that the burden these increased healthcare costs place on working and middle-class Americans is inexcusable. He stated that rising premiums have created a government-mandated restaurant recession because people have less money to spend dining out. Rising healthcare premiums are too high, so people can't buy my fucking food. There's where this person's priorities lie. Back to the Prager UwU video. I only want to shoot myself a little bit.
The graph is based on the research conducted by the late British economist Angus Maddison. The numbers along the x-axis are years, 2,000 of them. The number on the y-axis are dollars, all of them, divided by the number of people on the planet. It's what's called GDP per capita, which is the world's economic output divided by its population. GDP is considered the best measurement of a country's standard of living, and in this case, the world's standard of living.
While fair, your standard of living and whether or not your people can afford basic needs are not the same thing. If the only way you can measure how well your country is doing and how well it supports its citizens is GDP, you're not actually measuring the benefits of your nation very well. Like, it includes the people who are at the richest top percentage of the echelon as much as it includes the people at the lowest. So you end up getting, yeah, no, the average wage is this, but most people don't live on the average wage at that point.
Often when I show this graph to students, I get this comment, that's not capitalism. It's just the impact of the Industrial Revolution.
That is one issue I had with it, but I was willing to grant the entire graph and point out the actual systematic problem with it.
So I show them another chart by the Madison Project. This one breaks the GDP hockey stick into regions. As you can see, there are a number of hockey sticks, but note that they don't rise at the same time. The United States surged first. Why? Well, in a very
On his graph, Eastern Europe surged before. It's on the graph. It's right there. It didn't get as high as quickly, but it's right fucking there. What? The USA surged first. Why? No, it surged harder, but it didn't surge first. Your fucking graph shows Eastern Europe surging first. Holy shit! What?
Fortuitous coincidence, the year 1776 witnessed both the signing of our Declaration of Independence and the publication of a book called The Wealth of Nations by the Scottish economist and philosopher Adam Smith. In his book, Smith explained how to create a modern free market capitalist economy and the benefits of doing so. America's wise founders took Smith's principles to heart, and within a mere 100 years, the blink of an eye historically, capitalism turned the United States from 13 backwoods colonies into the world's largest economy.
But we are not a fully capitalistic society. Even so, Adam Smith is not the end-all be-all economist. He's not. And again, you're not even realizing the fact that there are negatives to having a fully capitalistic society, like the health of your people not being taken into consideration.
And it's held that position ever since. Western Europe shot up as well, but later. It rose steadily during the Industrial Revolution. And
okay, no, that is slight... Oh, that's really weird. No, that's about the same time. That's about the same time. The surge is at the same time. It's just not as big of one.
And then experienced a sharp rise after World War II when, between the end of the war and the mid-1960s, it fully embraced the free market.
I don't think that's exactly how that happened, but okay. And even then, if I were to assume that that is correct, then that still leaves us with the problem that you're trying to measure the prosperity of individuals by GDP.
Japan too shot up after World War II, surpassing Western Europe for the first time, after the U.S. helped the Japanese transition to a democracy and a free market capitalist economy.
Fact-checking time. What? Wait. Let's see here. Where the real position is. Okay. So the democracy portion is correct. That one is correct, but let's see here. The other thing, though, is that they are not fully capitalistic. They still have many things that are handled, like, socially. So, while this is technically correct, they are not a fully free market capitalist society. Like... So they have a free market economy. It's the third largest in the world, surpassed by China in 2010. Oh, wait a minute. That's a fun thing. Their free market economy is the third largest in the world, but surpassed by China. But China is ruled by the Communist Party. Wait a minute. That's weird. That's information that I don't know if he would care to show anybody. Then again, I really wouldn't actually call China a communist country anyway. But okay. We'll go ahead and go with what they're saying here, because the economy itself, not counting things like the medical industry, which are subsidized and held by the government, that does seem to be correct so far.
Eastern Europe took off after it was released from the Soviet Union and socialism in 1991. China did likewise after the Chinese moved away from strict socialism and implemented some limited free market policies.
Yes, it is almost as if they have a mixed economy. What a weird concept. What a weird thing.
One can only imagine where China would be now if its leaders had fully unleashed the forces of the free market. Yes,
fully unleash the forces of the free market. Okay. Sure. Why not? That verbiage.
During this period of economic expansion, the wealthy got wealthier. That always happens when new wealth is created. Mm-hmm. But the middle class and the poor also greatly benefited. Here's another telling chart.
Yes, the poor did benefit. The poor right now, let's talk about a fact thing real quick. The poor right now have a much higher standard of living than the poor did 200 years ago, 300 years ago, 500 years ago. This is an indisputable fact. The thing is, though, is that gets used as a token. The poor are doing better now than they have before, so there isn't a problem. Well, no. If the poor are still not doing well comparatively, and I literally just ran the fucking numbers for this, they're not, then you can't argue that nothing needs to get done at that point. And that's the thing that happens all the time when somebody says this, oh, the poor are doing better than they did before. You're right. Let's say that I'm dying of syphilis. I am dying of... I'm trying to think of diseases that aren't STDs for a second here. I have malaria, I have syphilis, and I have a brain tumor. I'm dying of these three things. And we remove the tumor. It's gone completely. Everything's good. Perfect. 10 out of 10. My life's doing better. You're doing much better now. Yes. Can we please treat my syphilis? Can we please treat, like, the malaria? Can we deal with those, please? Nah, your brain tumor's taken care of. You're doing better than you were before. Yeah, you're right. I am. But I still have two fucking things that need to be taken care of. Just trying to say that the tumor's gone doesn't change the two other fucking problems. The tumor's gone, but I have tumor problems.
This one is from the World Bank. In 1820, 94% of people lived in extreme poverty. Thanks to capitalism, by 2015, that number declined to 9.6%. Single digits for the first time in human history. Now, it's still too many. But if we're going to reduce the number even more, we need to understand what caused the decline. Free market capitalism.
Free market capitalism helps with that, yes. But there are still things that capitalism should not have control of, like health care. And a free market does not do wonders for the housing market, as an example.
If we combine the Angus Madison hockey stick chart and the World Bank data on extreme poverty, what we get is something quite amazing. Unprecedented global prosperity and an unprecedented decline in poverty across the globe over the past 200 years. That's capitalism in a nutshell. One more chart. Johann.
And nobody is denying that capitalism is on its own a bad thing, period. It's when it's unregulated, unrestricted, and when it has the ability to deal with nothing but for profit as opposed to for benefit of the people that we have a problem. And as it so happens, that's the situation we live in here in the States, where capitalism has ran its course and it's done a wonderful job, but it's starting to hit a boiling point. Or it's been at a boiling point for a while, and it's starting to boil over, depending on where you are and how you view it.
Norberg, a Swedish economic historian, shows us how well ordinary people do when they work in a free market economy.
Also, the Undead Slayer says the original person who argued that capitalism was good for the human project said that it only works if it helps the poor afford their needs. Even he disagrees with this simpleton. Wow, what do you know?
1990, hunger, poverty, illiteracy, and child mortality have all declined significantly with the decline of socialism.
Wait a minute. Wait. Okay, so which is it? Because Prager UwU, in previous videos, because they script these and hand them to people, in previous videos, Prager UwU has said silly things like socialism has never been tried before. Socialism's never been used before. It's untested. Or they'll try to argue that socialism never worked before. But then we have this conversation about a decline of socialism. Well, wait a minute, hold on. Did the socialism not work, or was it not tried? Or did the socialism work just not as well as you wanted? Like, which one is it? Which one is it here? Also, the thing is, capitalism can get a country to a better GDP. Yes, but socialism can get it to where your people who are working at the bottom echelon of society have a more sustainable and better livelihood. So when you try to do something like this, where you say that capitalism is this God, Jesus, savior of everything, you're being an extremist. You're literally ignoring the nuances and things that socialistic policies can do to even fucking aid capitalism. You can use capitalism to aid socialism in order to make goods and services cheaper, and you can use socialism to aid capitalism in order to make it to where people's basic needs can be better met. This is not rocket science. This is basic fucking economics. Very fucking basic.
This all happened while we added 2 billion more people to the world. Far more people, far less poverty, better health outcomes, fewer babies dying.
Fewer babies dying. I love that slip in there. I know that he's not talking about abortion, but it's Prager UwU, so I want to say there was an agenda to that for fun.
That's what economic freedom, capitalism can do. President John Kennedy, a Democrat, said it best. While making his case for significant tax cuts in 1963, he said, "A rising tide lifts all boats." Kennedy didn't believe that the poor only get richer when the rich get poorer. He believed everyone could get richer with economic growth.
Nobody wants the rich to get poorer so that the poor can get richer. It just so happens that we don't think the rich needed to be as rich as they are in the first place, and that wealth would be better distributed to the poor so that there are not poorer people, and the richer are not quite as rich. I guess that is technically the same thing as saying the rich need to get less rich so the poor can be less poor. I guess that is the same thing. You know what? Never mind. You're fine. We'll go ahead and just call it Robin Hood.
History has shown that he was right. This whole capitalism versus socialism debate is backwards. It's not those who advocate for free market capitalism who need to justify their actions. Rather, it's those advocating for socialism or...
Okay, tu quoque. What a wonderful concept. What a wonderful thing. Tu quoque is the fallacy where you basically engage in whataboutism. Tu quoque, or the et tu fallacy, is when you say, I don't need to justify my position, you need to justify your position. You still need to justify your position. There is nothing about your position that makes it so fucking axiomatic that you do not still have to support it in a conversation. Do not engage in the fucking tu quoque fallacy. Bad. Stop it.
Any form of it, who have a lot of explaining to do. I'm Andy Puzder for Prager University.
This video was made possible by a generous donation from the Jaquish and Kenninger Foundation.
Wonderful. Who cares? Okay. See ya, Abby. Captain Diabetes says, I don't even care if I make more money. I make $13.75 an hour in a boring office. Me and my wife would be better off if my fucking medical supplies for my diabetes weren't so fucking expensive. Correct. Which is why having a free market control your medical expenses isn't really the best act. It's not. I'm sorry. It's not. Anybody who argues that, you know what? Anybody who argues that needs to justify their position. Let's go ahead and just go with that. We'll go ahead and use their words against them.